great to be here. I have to congratulate Susan and Gillian for organising this event. It's wonderful to be at an event where everything is about positivity and it's about you finding ways to better self-manage your MS. And what I hope to do with this talk is give you a little bit of the kind of science behind it, but then give you some really practical things that you can take away and do and hopefully change some of your behaviours. As Dr. Moore has said, exercise is now, or lifestyle modifications is now one of the toolbox of treating your MS and living well with your MS. As Susan said, I'm a physiotherapist. I have worked in neurology for more years than I would care to remember. I've always worked in neurology, and for the last 15 years I've been based at UL leading the MS research team. So I'm the physiotherapist who was involved in getting the balance right. Ava Backus calls me the getting the balance right lady, but I've evolved since then. We're doing lots of different programs. So I've been researching various different exercise, physical activity programs. So I want to share a little bit about that with you today. So this is really the outline of what I'm going to say today. I'm going to talk about kind of being fit and what the various aspects are. I'm going to talk about what the research says about exercise for our people with MS. I'm going to talk about a little bit about what people with MS say about exercising. Focus on kind of, lots of people ask me, well, what kind of exercise can I do? And my answer is always, whatever you want to do. Because there's so many different things out there. And the principle is that you're going to move more. And once you're moving, you're doing well. Give you some tips to get started and gives you some tips to keep going and build a healthy life. So when we think about fitness and we think about the effects of exercise, we really need to think about 4 areas. And I think particularly when you're living with MS, it's important to remember the 4 different areas, okay? So we've got kind of, typically when we think about fitness, we think about being fit and maybe not losing your breath when you walk upstairs or being able to walk a long distance. And that's what we call cardiovascular fitness or aerobic fitness, okay? But there's 3 other types of fitness that we also need to remember. We need to remember muscular fitness, which is being strong or strength, and we know that increasing strength is associated with being able to walk better, being able to balance better, not falling as much, important things like that. We need to think about flexibility. So those of you who have high tone or spasticity will be particularly aware of the need to keep those overactive muscles long and flexible. But we also need to think about balance, and balancing or being able to be upright against gravity is an important aspect of living with MS. And what's really interesting is we used to think that balance affected people later on, but actually when you test somebody who's newly diagnosed, quite often their balance can be worse than it should be, not terribly bad in the greater scheme of things. So it's an important aspect that we need to consider. So keep in mind those 4 aspects. So if you're somebody who goes for a walk, well done, that's great. You're looking after your cardiovascular fitness, but you also need to just be aware, am I looking after the other 3 components of fitness? And we need all of the bits of the puzzle to enable us to live the lives that we choose to live, okay? So, sitting is the new smoking. And I always laugh when I put up these slides, because usually everybody I'm talking to is sitting down. They estimate, and this is not just for people with MS, so those of you who are partners, significant others, family members, this is for you as well, okay? They reckon there will be more health issues as a result of inactivity as there will as a result of smoking, okay? So sitting down is not good for any of us. Now, it's a necessary part of living with MS, and taking rests is important, but it's really important that you break up sitting time and that you move. So if you're somebody who sits a lot, you need to make a change, because that's not helping your health and it's actually not helping your MS, okay? So you have to remember, when you have MS, it does not mean you're immune to all of kinds of other health. So when you have MS, you still have a heart and lungs that needs to be looked after. And we need to be active because of our heart and our lungs, okay? Not just because of your MS. So the antidote to sitting is to move more. And I always say to people, move what you can, when you can, okay? So some of you are wheelchair users, some of you use a walking aid. That doesn't mean that you can't move more, all right? Some forms of kind of formal exercise might be difficult, but everybody can move a little bit more tomorrow than they did today. And if that's one thing you achieve as a result of walking out of here, I will have done my job. So just think, move a little bit more tomorrow than you did today. And any kind of movement is good, right? Any kind of movement is better than sitting doing that. There's a huge worldwide call for exercise as medicine, and there is a group You can now, the American College of Sports Medicine now has an accreditation system where they can accredit organizations, universities, hospitals as exercise medicine centers. So a very prominent physician said that exercise is medicine and physicians need to prescribe it. And we're starting to hear about GPs doing what's called social prescribing. So you go to your GP and you're feeling a little bit blue and you're fatigued, you're not as fit as you should be, maybe your symptoms are a little bit worse. There is a move now that GPs will prescribe exercise, okay? And if exercise was as good as a pill, it is as good as a pill, GPs should be prescribing it. But there is a little bit of bad news. It's not as easy as taking a pill, okay? So there's a little bit more complicated to it. But exercise is medicine. Exercise is medicine for everybody. Being active is important for everybody. But I would argue particularly important for people. So there is no magic pill. That's the bad news. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, okay? If you can exercise, do. Move more, sit less. And that does apply to MS too. So when I was in college, I was taught that people with MS should take it easy. I like to think that's not long ago, it's over 25 years now, but it takes a long time to shift practice. So there's still an awful lot of physios out there, and an awful lot of doctors out there who were trained at the time when they were told people with MS should take it easy. You know, take to the bed. That was the original kind of treatment for MS. That's now completely wrong. So what I want to do next is take you through a little bit of the science that says why exercise is good for MS, okay? And then think about the reasons why that might have been the case in the original. So, so MS used to be diagnosed by what was called a hot bath test, right? And some of you will experience that feeling of if you get into a sauna or a jacuzzi or a hot bath, or you get hot when you're exercising, that maybe you get some numbness or some tingling, or maybe your foot doesn't pull up as much as it should, or maybe your leg starts to get a bit shaky, and that can be really, really scary. If you're somebody who hasn't exercised and you go out and exercise and then suddenly you get symptoms, it can be very scary. The important thing for you to know is that that symptom change is transient and that that's not a relapse, okay? So heat sensitivity, so all of us when we exercise, when we go to the gym, when we go for a long walk, our body temperatures get hot, okay? But what happens when you have MS is that increase in temperature affects how your nerves send signals from your brain to your muscles and vice versa. But the important thing is that it's transient. It will usually pass after about 30 minutes when your body temperature goes back to normal. So if you're somebody who experiences heat sensitivity, your instinct is, oh my God, this is making my symptoms worse, I should stop. That's not the case, okay? So people with heat sensitivity can exercise, and actually what's really interesting, there's some new research evidence coming from Ulrich Dalgas's team in Denmark that says actually your heat sensitivity can improve the fitter you are and the more you exercise, okay? So if you're somebody who has heat sensitivity, there's some strategies there. So pre-cooling, so having a bottle of iced water and drinking the iced water as your exercise to keep your core temperature down. Exercising in cold environments, pick the treadmill machine that's underneath the air conditioning vent in the gym, walk in the early morning or the late evening when it's not as warm. Think about exercising where you can do a little bit and rest a little bit. Do a little bit and rest a little bit. So then your core temperature doesn't continue to build, you're letting your core temperature drop a bit. And think about, so instead of going for your 30-minute walk, maybe you would be somebody who would be better going for 3 10-minute walks. And we're starting to know that the health benefits of many short bouts of exercise are very similar to long. So if you're somebody who really can't go for a long walk, then maybe think about doing 3 short walks. But this is why we used to say that exercise was harmful, because when people exercise, their symptoms get worse. But my key message for you is that it is transient, and it will likely improve the fitter you are and the more you stick with it. And if you have an increase of symptoms when you exercise, don't stop exercising, okay? You need to take it into account, but you need to do it. Okay. So, I don't know how familiar you are with research papers and things like that, but I think these are called forest plots. And I think if you're somebody who likes to turn to science and look for it, it's important that you know what you're looking at. So, you can see that where the arrow is, this line, this is the 0 line, and I like to think of that as the fence, right? So if the diamonds for each study are sitting on that fence, it could go either way. We're not sure which is better, okay? So this is looking at the question, can exercise improve strength? And what you can see is that the diamond in the yellow circle which is basically the results of all of the studies pulled together, is clearly to the right-hand side. So that's saying that there's a very strong positive benefit of exercise on strength for people with MS. So we're now talking about MS studies, okay? So exercise can really have a positive effect on strength, right? Now you can see there's some studies that didn't work as well, and that's where we as researchers need to start thinking about the type of exercise. So obviously, if you wanted to get better at tennis, you wouldn't practice golf, right? Simple premise. So if you want to get stronger, then you don't want to do balance exercises, yeah? So there's a piece called specificity. So if you want to get stronger, you need to think about strengthening exercises. So going for a walk is really good for you, but it's not going to make you stronger necessarily, all right? And that's probably why we see this difference in where the diamonds are. But the message from this side is the diamond is off the fence, clearly to the right, saying there's a positive benefit of exercise on strength for people with MS. And the next thing we're looking at is cardiovascular fitness, so heart and lungs. So again, you can see that line there is your fence. So the diamond is clearly off the fence. There's a clear benefit of exercise on cardiovascular fitness, what we can commonly think of as fitness for people with MS. And actually the vast majority of studies in this area are very, very positive. So people with MS can get stronger, people with MS can get fitter. That's the message from those two. Now, as Dr. Moore mentioned, fatigue is very, very common in people with MS. Estimates of between 60 and 80% of people with MS suffer from fatigue. And if you're feeling really, really fatigued, the last thing that you want to do is get up and exercise. So it's quite a hard sell. But the effect of exercise on fatigue is really very, very positive. I want to give you a very real example. I had a young woman, she was 27, she was diagnosed 3 or 4 years ago. She was thinking about giving up work because she was so fatigued. We had an exercise class at 6:30 to 8:30. At 7:30, she said, I'd normally be in bed. She was really, really fatigued. She stuck with the program. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program. It basically got people from being completely active to meeting the MS guideline very slowly, very gradual increases. And 3 months later, she's at work. She's running twice a week with her dog, 30 minutes twice a week, and she has got her life back. So it does work. And so those of you who are feeling so exhausted, you really can't think about exercising, it can have a really, really, really profound effect. So please do consider it and please stick with it. I'm just going to give you some handy tips about it later. So, research question, can exercise improve fatigue? And the answer is yes. So you can see this diamond here, clearly to the other side. So fatigue is reduced, which is what we want fatigue to be. You can see how many studies there are. So there's an awful lot of research evidence that says that exercise can have a beneficial effect on fatigue. The bit down the bottom is just comparing different types of exercise. And what's particularly effective in reducing fatigue is what we call endurance training or mixed training, okay? So strength training might have a little bit of an effect, but things where you're working your heart and your lungs, so you're walking further, or you're walking for longer, or you're working harder when you're walking, those kind of endurance activities, so further, faster, longer, those are the kind of exercise that will have an effect on your fatigue, okay? So building endurance, that you're starting with a little bit and then you're going further or faster or longer. Strength training will have a moderate effect, but it's not as effective as endurance training, okay? So Helena mentioned the blues and feeling down, and that's very common among people with MS. In the broader literature, for people with a myriad of health conditions, there's an awful lot of evidence to say that exercise can have a beneficial effect on mood. I know certainly if I'm having a bad day, I come home from work, I throw on the runners, not pink, sorry, and I go up in the forest with the dog, and that lifts my mood incredibly. So I think a lot of you will have examples of that. But again, looking at the literature, this is a study by my group in UL. We wanted to look at all of the different studies on exercise and fatigue, and again you can see that it's a circle this time, but it's clearly off the fence. It's clearly to the right of that zero line, saying that there's very strong evidence that exercise can have a beneficial effect on your mental health. And that's known for everybody. So the interesting thing about mental health is it's looking like you need to be exercising about 3 times a week to make a difference on mental health. So once a week is good, once a week is better than sitting, so well done. But if you want to have a beneficial effect on mental health, it looks like you need to be thinking about 3 times a week. If you reduce fatigue, you also improve mental health, so probably we're thinking about those kind of endurance activities 3 times a week, so going for a walk, doing some cycling, swimming lengths in a pool, those kind of things where you're working your heart and lungs. All right? So balance is an important symptom. Sorry, it's not an important symptom. It's a very common symptom, and it's important that we address it. And you can see that the diamonds are kind of on the fence a lot of this time, okay? And this for me highlights the importance of that specificity principle again, okay? So the top diamond is talking about resistance training or strength training. So typically, if you sit on a machine and straighten your knees, you're not going to improve your balance, yeah? If you do yoga, you're balancing, you're probably going to improve your balance, okay? And you can see that the diamond that's furthest to the right is the 4th one down, and that is studies that use balance and so exercise where you're moving, right? So instead of doing seated leg presses, maybe doing something like squats or lunges. So as you're doing those, you're balancing as you're strengthening. So those are the kind of things that are going to have an effect on your balance. So remember that thing. If you want to get better at golf, don't play tennis. If you want your balance to improve, you have to challenge your balance. And to challenge your balance, you have to be standing up, okay? But it's one of those things you have to be incredibly safe about. So if you're somebody who loses your balance and falls, I think you definitely need some advice from a physiotherapist about what's right for you. But you can see that there's quite strong evidence for balancing exercises to have an improvement on balance, okay? So we're now at the stage that there's so much research evidence that there is an exercise guideline for MS. Okay, and this was published in 2013. I've actually just been involved with a group with the American MS Society where we're revising these, and we're doing specific guidelines for each EDSS level. So EDSS is a scale that we in the medical world use to say kind of how bad your MS is affecting you. So this is what the minimum amount you should be doing. So when Helena was talking about only 20% of people being active enough, they're meeting these guidelines, okay? So so you can see it's broken into aerobic activity and strength training activity. So you should be doing something that challenges your heart and lungs, like a walk twice a week. And the key word here is gradually increase. I'm going to talk about this kind of boom and bust phenomenon, but a lot of people, they do nothing, they think, okay, I'm going to go and get exercise, and they do way too much. They feel crap. And then they sit down and do nothing again, right? So the important thing is to gradually increase. Do a little bit more tomorrow than you did today. Do a little bit more the next day. Do a little bit more the next day, okay? So it's not, don't start, if you're somebody who hasn't been for a walk in 2 months, don't suddenly start and do 2 30-minute walks, because you'll feel really bad. Start with a 10-minute walk, see how you go. Increase it to 12 minutes, increase it to 14 minutes, and just take it up gradually. Moderate intensity. So moderate intensity, if you're somebody who has a Fitbit like me, mine actually ran out of battery this morning. So 100 steps per minute is roughly moderate intensity for people with MS. So if you walk for 10 minutes, you want to be doing around 1,000 steps. And that's so that you're working hard enough that you're feeling the benefits for your heart and your lungs, for your aerobic fitness, okay? So 100 steps per minute, or that you can talk but not sing. That's another way. So if you're walking beside somebody and you can have a chat and you're chatting away in your normal voice, normal speed, and you're not stopping every minute to take a breath, you want to be kind of stopping every now and again to take a breath, to be working hard enough, okay? So going for a little stroll, it's better than sitting, but to really get the benefits, you want to be working at moderate intensity, all right? In terms of strength training, again, twice weekly. I have to say, I'm going to put my hand up and say that's the bit I find hard. I walk my dogs in the forest. That's my aerobic activity. But I find it hard to find opportunities to do strength training. But strength training is really, really important. It's an important element of the fitness toolbox. And generally, you want to be working hard. So if you can do 20 of them really easily, it's actually not enough. It's better than sitting. It's definitely good, but it's not as good as if when you're getting to the 10th one and the 11th when you almost can't lift it, that's where you want to be, okay? And you don't need to buy fancy weights, you don't need to do anything like this. I start with tins of sweet corn, the little small ones, then progress to cans of tomatoes, and then progress to bigger things, or buy a litre bottle of water and put a little bit in it and then gradually increase it. You don't need fancy weights to do strength training. You can lots of things. You can use TheraBands, the yellow and red and green bands that your physios would give you. All of that is resistance training. But the principle is it has to be hard. If it's easy, it's better than sitting, but it's not as good as if you're what we call failing on the 10th, the 12th, or the 15th repetition. Okay? So what people with MS say. Now, I'm not expecting you to read it, okay? What I want to just notice is that above the line is all of the positive benefits of exercising. So this is taking all of the studies where they've interviewed people with MS and asked them how they feel about exercise, okay? And you can see that overwhelmingly it's positive. And what's really interesting, and I think for me this is the really important thing about exercising, is the social benefits as well. Some of you will come to the MS Ireland groups, and for me, it's actually the coming and chatting with somebody else who knows what you're going through and solving problems together and having the cup of tea afterwards. I think that's probably more important than the exercise, because you need your social networks. You need to be able to vent when you're having a bad day. You need to find other people who have gone through something similar. So the social benefits of exercise are huge. We've just started a walking group in Mungra Park in Limerick with people with MS and stroke and Parkinson's, and it's great. It's the chats, and suddenly you've done a loop which is 1.2 kilometres, and it's suddenly done, and you've learned something, and you've solved a problem, and you've had a good moan, or you've had a good you've worked out a problem together. So much more benefits than adverse effects. Now some people do get very fatigued after exercising, but again I think that's that boom and bust. Just do a little bit more than you did today. So that you're gradually asking your body, how much is this enough? Is this enough for me? Is this how I'm going to feel? Okay? So overwhelmingly positive benefits. I told you a story of how starting to exercise had a really profound effect on somebody's fatigue and how they were living with their MS, and I have lots of stories like that as a result of the work we've done. So what I want you to hear is that there is a world of possibilities, okay? Just because you have MS does not mean there is nothing that you can't do, all right? This is Conor Devine. Conor is a young man who lives with MS. Conor, if you're on Twitter, go follow Conor. He did 26 marathons in a year, and he lives with MS. He's done an Ironman. Now, can I just say, I feel tired just looking at it. I have absolutely no, I don't even know that I do a 5K, so well done, Helena. I have no intention of ever running a marathon. But what I want you to hear is that there's nothing that can stop you, okay? But you can't just suddenly go and run a marathon tomorrow, because your body will say, no, that's not for me. So you have to learn to listen to your body. You have to learn to listen to your fatigue. You have to learn to listen to your symptoms and see what's right for you. And the most important thing is start small and gradually increase. Don't suddenly go out and do far too much, because you'll feel like crap. And then you won't do it again because you feel really bad. Just do a little bit more tomorrow than you did today, okay? The lady on the right is Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie is a rower. She rowed in the Paralympics. I can't remember how many people were in the boat, but she's a Paralympic rower. And the lady in the middle there is Emma Rogan. Emma lives with MS. She runs the Meet Up with MS group in Dublin, a group of young people who meet up. That's her running the half marathon in Berlin. So there is a world of possibilities, okay? But for those of you who were very active, probably the counter is, so for those of you who aren't currently active, there's a world of possibilities. For those of you who were active, you are going to have to think about doing things differently. It's not about stopping, but it's just about doing things differently, listening to your body, working out what's right for you. So, people always say to me, what exercise should I do? These are all of the different types of exercise that have been shown to have beneficial effects, okay? So my message to you is do something that you enjoy. I'm not a gym bunny. You can probably tell by looking at me, right? I'm going to walk my dogs in the forest because that's what I enjoy. If you enjoy yoga, do yoga. If you enjoy horse riding, do horse riding. If you enjoy gardening, do gardening, all right? Do what you enjoy. And the other thing is to do something that's convenient, because if it's across the far side of town and you have to go that way and then come home, there's far too many excuses not to. Whereas if it's on the way home, you're more likely to do it, okay? The other thing is to find your exercise buddy. right? And you find the person, you say, when I ring you up and say, let's go for a walk, you come with me. When I ring you up and say, I really don't feel like going to walk, you're going to be the person who says, no, we're going for a walk, all right? So hang out with the people who say, we're going for a walk, not the people who bring you chocolate, all right? Okay? So it's what's called self-efficacy, right? Finding people who will support you in your journey. And if you've got somebody who says, no, you have MS, take it easy, don't hang out with them, right? Because they're not helping you. Hang out with the person who says, no, we're going for a walk. Let's even just do 5 minutes. And usually, when you feel like doing nothing, even when you do 5 minutes, suddenly you think, do you know what, I'm going to go for 10. And then you'll feel so much better having done something rather than have done nothing, okay? So, I've kind of said this already. So, do something you enjoy. Do something that's easy to access, that is on the way home. And maybe you might want to do something that matches your bothersome symptoms. So if you're somebody where fatigue is an issue, then you probably want to be thinking about doing endurance exercise, yeah? So where you're going further, faster or longer, so something like walking or swimming or running or cycling, any of those kind of things. If your issue is balance, then you need to do something that challenges balance. So there's really good evidence for the effect of yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates. They all have a really good effect on balance for people with MS, okay? So you might want to think about matching something to your most bothersome symptom, or you might just want to do something that's convenient, that is on your way home, that you have no reason to not go there, all right? And I think Helene and I should work together more often, but we're both having a Nike movement. Just do it. Don't think about it, don't plan it, just do it. Put on your runners. You don't even need runners to go for a walk. You can walk in slippers. I wouldn't recommend it. But you don't need anything. A walk is great because you don't need any fancy equipment, okay? And certainly all over the country, these lovely parks with lovely tarmac paths that maybe have exercise equipment alongside them, they're popping up everywhere. They're really nice. They're usually about 1 kilometre around, which is a nice achievable distance. So I've said this a lot of times, I'm going to keep saying it. Start small and gradually increase. Don't go out tomorrow and do a whopping great amount of exercise and feel really bad, because then you're not going to associate exercise with feeling bad. Do a little bit, note how you feel. And this is the Step It Up protocol. So Step It Up was a study that we ran that was funded by the Health Research Board. We had about 94 people with MS. And we basically took people, they had to be completely inactive before they started, and they joined a program where they started with a 10-minute walk twice a week, and then increased it by 5 minutes a week until they were at that 30 minutes, okay? And then they started with one set of 12 repetitions of major muscle groups, so lifting your arms out to the side, lifting your arms up in front, squats, going from sitting to standing. Stuff you don't need any equipment for it, okay? And that had really, really good improvements. And when we ran Getting the Balance Right first and we assessed it, people did really, really well with it. They improved hugely. But when the classes stopped, they stopped. Okay? And then they started to feel bad again. So it's really important. This is about a healthy habit that you have for life. This isn't about something you do now just because it's January and Operation Transformation is just finished. Yeah? This is something that needs to be part of your life. Okay? But the key message, start small, gradually increase, and here's a formula that we know works. And I'm going to talk about the extra bits that these groups did that meant that they kept exercising for long. So listen to your body on the day, okay? I am giving you permission to have really bad days and take to the bed, do nothing, okay? But the important thing is if you're having a really bad day, that you listen to your body, but you also have a plan for when you're going to get started again, okay? Because if you keep having bad days and doing nothing, you're not going to get going again, okay? So listen to your body on that day. Remember that example of somebody who didn't want to go for a walk, but you just say, do you know what, I'm going to do 5 minutes, because I'll just feel like I've achieved something even if I do 5 minutes. That's a really good strategy. If you're on an injectable, do avoid strength training that muscle. So let's say you're injecting into your thigh, you want to avoid exercising that muscle that day and the day after. Just be nice to the muscle if it's processing the drug for you that day. Heat sensitivity I've talked about, okay? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't exercise. It means that it will be transient, and it means that you can think about those strategies such as cooling. The one thing I would say is, and I haven't mentioned it in this presentation, is if you're somebody who has problems with your bladder, you're better to drink a glass of water in one go and then go to the toilet than sipping away on it. When you're sipping cold water, it can quite often irritate the bladder, make you want to go to the bathroom. It's really, 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 really important that you drink when you're exercising. And I always say to people who come to my classes, I would much rather you were in and out of the loo 20 times during the exercise class and you had a bottle of water than you weren't drinking. It's really, really important to keep your hydration up. Okay. And my last point is for those of you who've gone out and done too much and felt really bad and felt really awful, okay? Slowly but surely, it's the only way to go. Do a little bit more tomorrow than you did today. So how do you keep this going? What are the things that you can do to help you, all right? So the most important thing you can do that is associated in all of the research studies with success is to make a goal, okay? So your goal might be that by June you're going to follow the MS guidelines, so 2 walks a week of 30 minutes and 2 strength training sessions, okay? But you're actually going to make 2 goals, because that's what we call an action plan, right? I'm going to do this work, right? So you want to go for why are you doing this? This is the first goal. I want to become more active so that my fatigue reduces. I want to become more active so that I can carry my child up the stairs, or I want to become stronger so I can carry 2 shopping bags out of the car. You set your goal. Why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve from it? And then you set your action plan. So in order to achieve that, I'm going to start with 2 10-minute walks and gradually increase by 5 minutes. And by June, I want to be at the exercise guide. See where I'm going? And do you know what the most important thing you can do is with a pen and paper, not on a tablet, not on a computer, with a pen and paper, write it down and stick it on your fridge so that you've remembered why you're doing this, okay, and what you're going to do. The second most important thing is to log what you're doing and how you feel, okay? Because a lot of you will feel really good when you're exercising, and it's important that you capture that moment. So for that evening when it's raining and you really don't want to go for a walk and you're really tired, you think, how do I feel when I'm exercising, okay? So that you write down what you did and write down how you feel, because you will feel better. I can guarantee it that you will feel better if you're exercising. Even the sense of achievement, yeah? I've got over the couch and I've done something. It doesn't matter how little it is, but the fact that you're doing something is a huge achievement. And you need to, we're very bad as Irish people about celebrating success, but we need to celebrate success. So, you know, give yourself a pat on the back. You got off the couch and you did something when you were feeling crappy. And that's really, really important to notice it. Look at others around you. So find people that you on social media, find people in your exercise class that are doing really well because they're exercising. Look at the changes in yourself, yeah? So a month into your exercise journey, think, well, how do I feel now compared to how I felt when I was starting? Because that change will keep you motivated, okay? And there will be barriers, okay? This is not like taking a pill. There will be barriers, and it's really important that you acknowledge them up front, and that you write down what they are. And it's also really important that you write down what you're going to do about them. So rain is a fantastic excuse not to go for a walk, yeah? But there is nothing, it's not bad weather, it's just the wrong clothes. Yeah, and God forbid we get wet and melt, I mean, honestly. So, you know what I mean? So you have to, so I'm not saying that bad weather it's a barrier, right? It is a genuine barrier, but you've got to write down what you're going to do about it. I'm going to put on my leggings and I'm going to get wet and put them in the wash when I come home, yeah? So you've got to think about what's the barrier and how are you going to overcome it. And as I said, I'm telling you that if you're having a bad day, you need to take a break. If your body's saying don't do anything today, that's fine. Listen to your body. But have a plan for how you're going to get started again. So I'm feeling really bad today. My fatigue levels are really bad today. Tomorrow I'm going to do a 10-minute walk. So maybe you're somebody who normally does 30 minutes. Yeah. So you're listening to your body. You're acknowledging your fatigue, but you're not becoming sedentary. You're not becoming that person who's sitting all the time. Okay. Those are probably the most important things. I mean, so what I want you to hear is there is nothing you can't do. You might have to do things differently than before you had MS. There's no magic pill for becoming fitter. You have to just get out and do it. And you need to think about the kind of the 4 facets in terms of aerobic fitness, heart and lungs, muscular fitness, which is strength, balance and flexibility when you're living with MS. But choose something you enjoy. And remember that if you're going to keep going, this is a lifetime habit. It's a lifetime living with MS. It's a lifetime managing your MS really well by exercising. It has a huge impact on your symptoms. It will reduce many of the symptoms, reduce fatigue, reduce depression, improve quality of life, but make a goal and do a little bit more tomorrow than you did today. Thank you very much.
could be listening to Susan all day. Does anyone have any questions? Raise your hands.
Hi, I'm just wondering what UL have for people in wheelchairs that don't participate in getting the balance right.
Yeah.
So,
and you're very right to call me out on that. We haven't paid enough attention to that group yet, and I put my hand up and say that. But we are doing different. I mean, essentially, if you're a person in a wheelchair, there are lots of equipment in gyms that is adapted for wheelchair use. Quite a lot of the county council gyms are now accredited. Actually, the Cara Centre in IT Tralee will accredit gyms and exercise facilities. So if you're wondering, just Google gyms accredited Cara, C-A-R-A, and they'll tell you what exercise facilities. The Irish Wheelchair Association has a lot of sports that are adapted for wheelchair users, so that's another good place to go. I think if you're asking me as a physio from looking at the research, what should you do, I would be saying move what you can when you can, okay? So arm exercises when you're sitting, if you have some movement in your legs, you can do seated marches, you can do things like that. I know the physio team have a program of seated exercises that the HSE have that you can do. So I think what I would say is move what you can when you can, and that principle of always trying to do a little bit more. You know, if you have arm movement, then use your arms and start moving your arms with no weights, and then add a small can of sweet corn and move your arms. Yeah.
Would a muscle stimulator be any good for moving the muscle?
Yeah. Okay. So muscle stimulators are sometimes great and they're sometimes not, and I'll be very honest about that. So what a muscle stimulator does is it makes the muscle contract. Okay. What it doesn't help do necessarily, unless you use it in a specific way, is connect the brain back to the muscle. Okay, so it keeps the muscle contracting and keeps the muscle healthy. It's certainly not going to do any harm. It's most powerful when it's done in a way that you're connecting your brain with your muscle again, because that's the issue with MS, isn't it? We're not getting the signal from the brain down to the muscle. So muscle stimulation is good for treating the muscle. It's most powerful when you're doing it maybe with movement. So some of you will have drop foot stimulators where it works as you're swinging your leg forward to switch on. When it's applied like that, it can be quite useful. It's certainly not going to do any harm.
You said about going for a walk. Say I can't go for a walk, so what should I be doing when I think of doing something?
Can you propel? Can you push? No.
I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah, but it's not a power. I can't see your chair, so I know it's a power chair. Yeah, so you can work your arms. You can. I don't know if some people have motor meds at home that they can. The motor med will assist your legs in moving. Some of the motor meds have arm attachments that you could go for a cycle rather than going for a walk.
Anyone else got a question?
How about circulation boosters?
I'm on the fence about those. It's not as good as exercise. So if sitting with a circulation booster is not going to be as good as standing up and moving. I'm not a fan. I'm going to name it. Yeah. I didn't say that, but yes.
We just have a lady here.
Yes.
What exercise is most beneficial for balance problems?
Okay, so we don't know yet. I can't stand up and say this is the best exercise for balance, right? But what I can say is an exercise that challenges your balance. So yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, or the exercises that your physio would prescribe that mean that you're having to work on your balance. So for some people it might be standing without holding on. That might be enough to challenge their balance. For some people it might be trying to practice standing on one leg. For other people it might be practicing walking and turning and moving. So it's very individualized. I can't say, well, there's no one size fits all for balance, first of all, but generally your balance has to be challenged. So sitting doing weights is not going to improve your balance. Okay? But there's no one kind of best balance exercise. But something that challenges your balance, that makes you slightly unsteady, that you're learning to kind of regain your balance. That's where you want to be.
Thanks, Susan, for a lovely presentation. You mentioned drop foot stimulators.
Yes.
What's the system through which
people with MS get those prescribed, or what's the...
It would be through your primary care physio, and it's not an easy journey or a short journey. Generally, and they're one of those things that work really well for some people, but not for everybody. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about is a lot of people will, if they go for a walk, so they start off fine and the heel is going down beautifully, and then the longer the walk gets on, the foot starts to flop on the floor, drop foot, okay? So there's a number of kind of really quick solutions. There's what's called a dictus splint, so basically there's a strap around your leg and it hooks into the laces on your runners, and some people don't like wearing them all the time, but they'll put them on to go for a walk because then they know the drop foot isn't going to stop them going further. You can get splints that go inside your shoe that basically hold your foot. It lets you bend the foot up, but it stops the foot dropping down. Those are called AFOs, ankle foot orthoses. Or you can get electrical stimulation devices. Now, sometimes you're better to go with one of the quick off-the-shelf things like the dictus splint or the AFO, because you could be waiting an awfully long time to get a drop foot stimulator. And to be honest, sometimes they work as well. If you just need it for going for a walk, they can work as well. The drop foot stimulators are expensive because they're a piece of technology, but the principle is that when the pressure comes off your heel, they work on the muscle to help pull your foot up. So rather than the brain signal coming from your brain to get the muscle to work, the machine is getting your muscle to work as you swing your leg. So, and they can work with some people and not everybody. So again, MS isn't called the snowflake disease for a reason. Everybody is different. So it's very hard for me to answer a question and say, this is right for everybody. It's very individual. You've got to work out what works for you.
Okay, Susan's actually around for the afternoon. She's avoiding the weather. So we're looking for that opportunity. Susan, I'll just mention a few things. We're going to serve lunch in the restaurant now. We've got some people who will guide you over. We would like that you're back by 1:15. Their tea and coffee is going to be served in this room. If you want to pop into the wellness centre during the time as well, or for the rest of the afternoon, we've got some therapists in there, and we've got the lovely Helen, we've got Margot, we've got the girls from the Tralee Centre, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember your names. And we have Dr. Mar, and we have Amy, and we have Aisling, and Emily. So make use of the centre next door as well. Enjoy your lunch, and thank you for the speakers so far.